back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to do my June wrap-up. I read quite a bit in June, way more than I did in May, and I participated in 2 readathons. I participated in the Smutathon and I participated in the Summerathon. I ended up reading quite a bit of books in between of those, so let's just go ahead and get started. The first book I read during Smutathon was Romancing the Duke by Tessa Dare. It follows a woman who basically goes to this woman whose dad was a writer who wrote the story about her life, but it really wasn't about her life, and she is actually destitute and doesn't have a lot of money. Goes to this place because she thinks that this is her chance, and she finds that she's been left this castle, except there's a duke living in the castle, and the duke is been in hiding for a while, and they kind of are teaming up to figure out who sold his castle without his knowledge, but romance ensues. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed this plot, and I'm really enjoying Tessa Dare's writing style. There was a bit of the whole, I'm not entirely sure these characters were totally on the same page thing going on at some points, which is to be expected with, you know, historical romances. However, it did bring down my enjoyment a bit, so I ended up giving this book 4 stars. Next, I decided to read Barbarian Alien. This is the second book in the Ice Planet Barbarian series by Ruby Dixon. I'm not sure what led me to decide to read this one, but I decided to read this one. These women get dropped off on this planet after being abducted by one set of aliens to fall in love with a second set of aliens. It's as bizarre as you would think. I ended up giving this book 3 stars, but I'm not sure if I want to continue, and then I end up reading the next one. Does that make sense? I don't think it does. The next book I read was actually a graphic novel, and that would be Sugar. A woman who becomes a sugar baby, but she does not super love the title being Sugar Baby. Does that make sense? I was kind of confused by it. I ended up giving this graphic novel 3 stars. She actually kind of looked down on the whole concept of being a sugar baby because she thought it was demeaning, but she was okay with it, but she was like, this is just a loan, and it was kind of confusing. This seems to be the beginning of a story as well, and it could have just been a single volume and it would have been probably more cohesive to me, and that's why I'm only giving this 3. Next, I read another graphic novel. This one was Swing. This is actually written by the same people who wrote Sugar. I read these both in the same day. This is about a couple who you see them as they first are getting together, and they're like madly like all over each other, and then as their life kind of progresses, they're like losing their hots for each other, and so the wife's like, let's start swinging, and you kind of see them progress, and it kind of ends as things are starting to heat up, and there's supposed to be a volume 2. I ended up giving this 4 stars because of how it just kind of ends without really knowing where it's headed. I know that they did that on purpose, obviously, but it would have been nice if we got some kind of conclusion, if that makes sense, just of the first arc. Next, I read Born Madly by Trisha Wolfe, which is the concluding book in this series. This is the book that was the Joker Harley Quinn story. I decided that dark contemporary romance is not my thing. It didn't make sense to me. It's probably like done that way by design, and it's kind of compelling, but I decided this based on this book that it wasn't for this kind of story. It wasn't for me. It was enjoyable, I just realized it wasn't for me. Next, I read Must Love Otters. This book involves a woman who breaks up with her boyfriend and goes on this vacation and really loves otters and meets this man, and it's cute and funny, but it's just surface level, and that's kind of, it was just average, and so I ended up giving it 3 stars. Looking back, I don't remember much except for this woman loves otters, and which is funny because this title is Must Love Otters, and I really liked the cover, and I remembered it being funny at the time, but overall, I don't remember much except for that. My last book for Smutathon was my only 5-star read of the month, which was pretty surprising because I had a good reading month and I gave quite a few 4 stars out, but I only gave out 1 5-star, and that was this book. This is about a girl who is considered the town pariah because she lives in a small town, and this new guy moves to town, and he is basically her new next door neighbor, and they hit it off. I really enjoyed the romance in this book, and the boundaries were clearly defined, very beautiful, and it was a very good romance, and I'm very much looking forward to reading more books by this author in the future. I read Under the Moon by Lauren Miracle. I received an e-arc of this through NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. I ended up giving this 2 stars. I really liked the art, and that was about it. I found this book really problematic. I didn't enjoy how there wasn't clear who the audience was for. The themes of this story are written and drawn like they're written for grown adults. The characters themselves are written like they're written for middle grade, and it does not work together, especially for a graphic novel. You cannot write a graphic novel that has themes written for an adult and depicted for an adult, but your audience being younger. Next, I read Final Draft by Riley Redke. This one involves a girl whose creative writing teacher has basically been saying that their work is amazing, and then this teacher is replaced, and the new teacher does not think their work is as great, and so now they're having a internal struggle about their work. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. My real issue involves pacing in regards to this story. I really enjoyed the representation, but the pacing issue is why I gave this book 3 stars, because I did not like how the book was paced. I read A Lesson in Thorns by Sarah Simone. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I will say that this book involves a chapel, and it's very erotic, and I'm not going to say much else because this is kind of a book where you shouldn't go in knowing too much, but I will label it erotic because that's very important to the story, so some people might not enjoy that, but knowing too much will hinder your enjoyment. So I'm not going to say much else. I'm kind of surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did because I didn't like a previous Sarah Simone book. I read We Hunt the Flame. This I received an e-arc of through NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I really enjoyed the enemies to lovers parts of this, but the pacing was really off for me. The middle chunk didn't really bring anything to the table for me, which ended up hindering the whole plot balance of this book, especially when your book is 400 pages long. It kind of sucks when your middle chunk doesn't feel like it's helping. So I ended up giving this book 3 stars. Next, I read Bloodstained. This is actually written by the same person who wrote the 2 erotic graphic novels that I read earlier in the month, and I'm kind of glad that I read something that was by them that wasn't erotic, so I could kind of figure out why I was having issues. Turns out all of their graphic novels end right as stuff starts happening. This one involves a chemistry major who is having issues keeping a job, and they basically get a job with a mad scientist, but they have to get there first. This one basically ends right as that starts happening. Their stories end right as the story really begins. And with this one, I ended up giving it 4 stars because I'm realizing it makes sense in a non-erotic setting. Next, I read Type, which is the first book in the Modern Fairy Tales series, which is really funny to say nowadays since this is no longer her Modern Fairy Tales, since she is currently writing the Folk of the Year series. Type is about Kay, who basically saves this guy who turns out to be a fairy. And this was interesting, and I sat on my rating for a bit, and I find that so fascinating because in 2017 I struggled with that if I wanted to read this story to begin with, because, well, what if I didn't like fairies, and what if I didn't like this story because it was written in 2002? And I ended up giving this book 3 stars, and it's interesting seeing how I grew as a reader, a reviewer, and a person since 2017. But there are things that happen in this book that would no longer be okay to write about and to say in your books, which obviously Holly Black doesn't do anymore. And that shows that she's grown as a writer. And so I ended up giving this book 3 stars, and that's okay. And I'm okay with that rating. And I'm looking forward to reading the next book and seeing how my rating changes on that one, because I definitely, as the series grew, I rated them less and less. So I'm interested as to where my ratings lie on the series. Next, I read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is the start of me reading books for Summerathon, and this book is about Daisy Jones and the band The Six and their rise and fall of fame, and it's told through interview format. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. It's very interesting that I ended up giving this book 3 stars because, kind of similar to bands, people have been loving this book, hating this book, and I'm apparently in the middle like I am with everything in life. As someone who read the audiobook, I don't think I would have enjoyed this much with the physical book, so I cannot rate this higher because I listened to the audiobook. And I say this as someone who rates books partially on enjoyment. I shouldn't have my enjoyment completely be determined by if I'm reading physically or listening to audiobook. I should not have it be a completely defining factor on if I can comprehend a story. Next, I read a manga. It is Beauty and the Beast Girl. This is about a beast girl falling in love and basically with a blind girl and telling her stories, and it's cute. It's a single issue, and it was just a queer time about a Beauty and the Beast kind of story, except for it involves a girl monster. It's cute. I was sold by its cover. I'm always down for a queer manga. Let's be real. I read With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. This book is about Imani, a teen mom who has the opportunity to participate in the culinary program at her school, which her school has never had, and at the end of the semesters they can go to Spain, which she does not think she can actually afford, and she is wondering if this is a once in a lifetime opportunity that she can risk doing. I really enjoyed this book. I listened to this one on audio, which is really ironic that I just said that audiobooks can affect your experience. However, I also read this alongside it. Elizabeth Acevedo has the ability to write lyrically, and she is a very lyrical person. The book I gave 4 stars, and I'm mesmerized with how lyrical her writing is, even in novel format. My main issue with this story is that sometimes Imani would do things that it did not seem like it would have been in the best interest, and her actions did not seem to have rhyme or reason. But other than that, I super love this book. Next, I read The Storm Runner by J.C. Cervantes. This is a Rick Riordan Presents book that involves Mayan mythology and follows Zane, who walks with a limp and has a cane. And I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I am very disappointed by this book. It has a lot of internalized ableism going on involving Zane. There's externalized ableism going on, but the internalized ableism involving Zane is really horrendous, and I do not think that this is a helpful book for middle grade readers. I read Hot Dog Girl by Jennifer Duggan. This is about a girl who works as the hot dog girl, and she is trying to convince her, and she has a crush on the person who plays the pirate, and she tries to convince her best friend to basically be her fake girlfriend, and in order to win the guy over. This I ended up giving 2 stars. Very disappointed that this is the bisexual girl uses best friend to get the guy trope, and I didn't realize that was that going in, and that's more on me for not fully understanding the synopsis for picking up the book. Additionally, I didn't like the main character. She's driven in an unlikable way, and I don't know if that's done on purpose or if it's done just because it's done. I don't know if we're supposed to root for the main character because she's our main character, or if she's supposed to be unlikable until the end. Additionally, there is a side plot about saving the place that they're working, and it doesn't super feel relevant to the story. And the last book I read in the month of June, and the last book I read for Summerathon, was Tell Me How You Really Feel. This book involves a film student and a cheerleader being forced together to work on the film student's final project. I ended up giving this book 4 stars, but it was a very high 4 stars. This book does the enemies to lovers, forcing the two to work together plot perfectly. You definitely feel for the characters, and they both have perspectives, but their voices are super unique, and you can tell that they do not like each other. I definitely didn't feel the time passage. However, there's countdown chapters towards the end of the book. It would have been nicer if the length of time was a bit longer. I understand that you couldn't have the book be super long because of that. It just would have been nicer if the book lasted a longer time period, if that makes any sense. But overall, I ended up enjoying this and I gave this book 4 stars. Alright, so that is everything that I read in the month of June. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these and what you thought about them. Thank you all so much for watching and have a nice day!